Hey, everybody, it's Devon.
And Kate in person.
In person. Welcome to Medcrimes.
We love you guys so much. And also, Devon and I are like breathing a sigh of relief because
I am so thankful.
Oh my God.
I'm so thankful.
So there was this young girl, a 9-year-old, who was, I think, abducted from her campground in New York.
We don't have all the full details, so we'll confirm an abduction,
Yes.
when you can. But
So everybody's been sharing it. Everybody's been talking about it. It's all I've been thinking about all day because I have a daughter who's very close to that age. And I'm sure as a lot of you know, Devon and I both frequent campgrounds.
Mhm.
And so this like kind of hit close to home for us because, I mean, our kids ride bikes.
It's supposed to be a safe
campgrounds.
place.
It's supposed to be safe.
Yeah.
And this girl was snatched from her campground right off of her bicycle. And we just now got an article that said she was found alive and a suspect was
right
in custody.
before we started recording. So
Oh
we're
my
just
God.
like coming off of this relief of these stories never end this way.
No.
And thank God it has. And thank you to all the law enforcement that
Oh my
obviously went into.
gosh.
And
Oh,
I'm so thankful.
this is, this was like the worst day. So I'm speaking as like her parents. Like for me, it would be like the worst day of my life if my child is missing, and then the best day of my life as soon as you hear she's safe, she's okay,
Can't
and
even
she's been
imagine.
found. But what an ordeal! And yes, thank you, law enforcement. They mobilized really quickly. They took it very seriously, and thank God for Amber Alerts. Is all I have to say about that.
Thank gosh.
Ugh. Anyway, enough with that morbid crap. Let's talk about our Patreons.
Patreons.
Because we love them so much. Our Patreons. So we have Beverly Latham.
Hi, Beverly.
Beverly, you're my hero. Thank
Welcome
you.
to the family.
We also have Kumi Noguchi.
Ooh,
Rare.
that's pretty.
All of you guys are pretty inside and out, and we love you so much. And I have decided what you are. You guys.
What are they? What are they?
You guys are alebrijes.
What the hell are those?
Devon, don't act like you've not seen Coco a million times.
I have
you
not.
seen? Are you kidding?
I have boys.
There's a mom
Still
here
not.
that's not. It doesn't matter. It's
Okay.
literally okay.
I guess that's next on the list.
Yeah, it is.
Coco.
If you see the movie Coco, though, there are these creatures, and it's part of like the lore, like the folklore of Latin America, I think, and Mexico, and I think there are these creatures that are like your familiars and your spirit guides, and oftentimes they're animals. And in Coco, they're like these big, beautiful, colorful, like imaginary like animals. Like there's like they can fly, and they're just beautiful and awesome. So that's what you guys are. You're alebrijes.
Can you say that one more time? Pronounce it.
Alebrije. Wow. I'm really sorry if I'm butchering that. Also, I am not of Latin or Mexican descent or
No, you're not.
any of that. I'm of New Hampshirean descent. Oh, God.
Thank you for being part of the family. We appreciate your support.
You guys are the best. And I am literally about to put you out of your misery with this Linda Hazzard business.
Here we go. Part trois.
Part trois. And where we left off, Dr. Linda Hazzard, quote unquote, who is not actually a doctor,
Correct.
has met and married this guy, Sam Hazzard.
Right.
And the two of them start this practice in Seattle after moving there from Minneapolis. She got some bad press in Minneapolis after some suspicious deaths, all from the fallout of her horrible program, which is essentially starvation and enemas and exercising people to death. It's horrific.
Oh.
So we know that she's now targeting the wealthier clientele, and she's trying to lure them in so that she can then have them sign their assets over to her and eventually just clean them out.
That's just baffling.
It is unbelievable that this went on for as long as it did. And in this part, you guys are going to be like, oh my God, does this ever end? And the answer is eventually, but it takes a while. It's just wild how much time this took.
Starting from a bad idea
Yeah.
of this program on how to treat people and going to essentially sounds like we haven't gotten into it, but being a con artist.
Oh, she and her husband are literally becoming these, con artists. Exactly right. You put it in the perfect term. So being in the public eye is difficult for her because she can never execute her plans the way she wants to. So she decides to build this big health retreat or sanitarium called Wilderness Heights on an island.
Lovely.
Sounds lovely. And it's on an island off the coast of Seattle called Olalla. And
ooh la la.
Ooh la la. And so, again, she's targeting wealthy people, and she's been communicating with these two sisters, Claire and Dora Williamson, who are wealthy British heiresses and sisters who came across Linda's writings in their search for relief from their chronic ailments. And so where we left off, there had been many suspicious deaths. She would never get charged with them because of the legal loopholes around licensing and such. And now the sisters are finally arriving to the Seattle area and into Linda's care. And here we are.
Dun, dun, dun.
So while her sanitarium construction was being completed, Linda had provided apartment accommodations right in Seattle so that anybody who was getting treated by her and waiting for the sanitarium to get completed could just be in close proximity. So she was setting people up in apartments near her practice. So the girls had been vacationing and visiting family in California prior to coming to see Linda. So they leave California and actually started their fast based on Linda's program and her writings before they even reached Seattle in their journey. So the day they left California, they were like, we're starting, and they both started fasting.
Done with food.
They kept their plans a secret from all of their families and everybody that they knew, including the relatives that they just left in California. Because at the time, alternative medicine is becoming a little bit more popular, but there's still this stigma associated with it. And the sisters kind of feared that they would be ridiculed or ostracized, especially from being in such high social standing that they were, that wasn't necessarily accepted in their community quite yet. So they were like, let's just keep this a secret and we'll do it and we'll get better and we don't have to talk to anybody about it. So at 11 a.m. on February 27th, 1911, Dora and Claire Williamson arrived into their new apartment, already having fasted for a few days. Claire and Dora arrived at Linda's office and Linda started right in on them. So the therapy was to begin with these quote-unquote massages. And remember, these massages are actually like beatings.
Oh, I forgot that.
Yeah. So
that's right.
They're pretty brutal. So,
oh, gosh.
Linda would commonly deliver blows about the head, the face, the back of the head, and the occipital region of the head, the back, the abdomen, the chest.
How hard?
Enough to leave marks and bruises.
Oh.
It was painful. It was very uncomfortable. So they also had been prescribed daily walks, as all of her patients were, and enemas, at least once a day. And according to the book Starvation Heights, which I will again link in the show notes, it's the book that I've gotten 99% of my information from, she promised to heal both of them of all their ailments within 30 days, as long as they followed the program to the T. 30 days. Give me 30 days. So
that seems on the shorter end compared to some of the others.
Yeah. And when
they were 45, 60 days.
And when you hear how long this whole ordeal actually lasted, you're like, what happened to the 30-day promise there, Linda?
Oh, God.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no.
So a few days into their treatment, both Dora and Claire were having issues with dizziness, lightheadedness. Both of them actually did faint and have syncopal episodes. Presumably, this was due to dehydration, as if we're not getting enough fluid, our blood volume actually reduces. And I think a lot of us have been dehydrated in the past, maybe after a GI bug or something like that. And we stand up really quick and we get a little dizzy. And this is actually because if we don't have enough blood volume circulating in our circulatory system, it can actually decrease perfusion to our organs, including our brain, which is where that dizziness comes from for short periods of time. And this is where the fainting and the dizziness comes in. A lot of times it starts out being a positional thing where you start feeling the symptoms if you are laying down and then you sit up quickly, or if you sit and then stand quickly. And these symptoms are also called orthostatic hypotension, which is most commonly caused by dehydration. So essentially it means because of the drop in the blood volume, your body takes a second to just adjust to that position and your blood pressure drops quickly, creating those symptoms. So presumably it was because they were dehydrated. So Linda, of course, had, a cockamamie excuse for why they were feeling this way. She said, no, it's not dehydration at all.
Of course not.
Because it's the toxins and poisons in your bodies that are fighting back against my program and trying to regain control.
There goes that Linda again. We gotta fight her.
Don't let it happen. Just keep going. Stick with the program.
Just little toxins. Fight them.
Keep getting dehydrated. And as we get further and further into this program, of course, the sisters become progressively weaker. And they're still going on walks as much as they can. And of course, still doing enema after enema after enema, which is just amplifying their dehydration.
Because they're not putting anything in and it's all coming out.
Everything's coming out. They're pulling more and more fluid and electrolytes out via their colon, and it's amplifying their nutritional deficits as well. So at this point, there probably, is profound muscle wasting due to malnutrition and lack of protein and other nutrients. So as they become so weak, they're not even able to venture out of their apartment anymore. Linda starts sending staff over to them in their apartment to continue to monitor the progress and take care of them. So remember, she had started hiring on a nursing staff for her sanitarium. So it was a couple of nurses that she would send over so that they would have a nurse or Linda every day to just check on them. One of the nurses that was sent over was 40-year-old Nellie Sherman. And she actually saw them frequently throughout the course of this program. And her job was to monitor their intake and make sure they were sticking to the program and also administer their enemas. So,
what a job.
Up ahead, this gets a little rough, just so you're aware.
I mean, I know nursing's very different now than what it was back then.
Yeah.
But did she really think this was cool? Fine? Gonna work?
There is a point at which she
speaks up.
She picks up that this is not normal and that, this woman is crazy. So, and we'll get to it. So reportedly, Nellie the nurse would have Dora and Claire.
Love that name, Nellie the nurse.
Nellie the nurse would have Dora and Claire get into the bathtub, get onto their knees and sort of kneel forward, bending over at the knees, and it was in this position that the girls would that Nellie would administer the girls their enemas. So sounds like a super exposed, super uncomfortable situation. They're losing their subcutaneous fat. So, I mean, it's being in the bathtub in that position was probably just so incredibly uncomfortable. And from what Nellie's documentation reflects, she would encourage her patients, Dora and Claire, to hold the enema in for a period of time. And so if we're using an enema for constipation, letting the liquid sort of sit in the rectum and dwell for 10-15 minutes can actually soften the stool and create a better result. So that's actually optimal. But in this scenario, they really aren't eating almost at all. And likely constipation really wasn't much of a factor. So she's starting to encourage them to hold, per Linda's instructions, to hold the enema for 30 minutes. And then it escalates, and over time, she's encouraging them to hold the enema in for longer and longer and longer periods. And the documentation actually reflects that some of the enemas would dwell for 2 or 3 hours.
Oh, God.
So that, first of all, has absolutely no medical benefit whatsoever and just draws more fluid and electrolytes out of the colon. And second of all, it was probably so incredibly uncomfortable. I mean,
can't imagine.
When you have, when you're getting an enema, I mean, you can get very crampy, have a lot of abdominal pain.
And it's stimulating those muscles to do what it's supposed to do.
Yes, exactly. So And we don't know what the solution makeup for the enemas was.
Right.
Like I have no idea what was it. There's several different types. There have been for a long time. We don't know what was being used or how much was being instilled. I wish we had those details, but we don't. But again, this was, way more dangerous than it was of any benefit whatsoever. In early March, Linda herself comes to check on the sisters in their apartment. She asks how they're doing. Both girls had lost a ton of weight and were incredibly weak at this point. We're going on 3 weeks at this point of Linda's excruciating program. So get this. She is something else. She randomly asks the women about their estate and their affairs and
here we go.
How much money they have and where is all of your money anyway? And do you have any other assets? And who are your family members that are in the area? And could anybody potentially have access to any of this? And the sisters told Linda,
what?
No, I mean, we are in total control. We have full access to all of our funds. There's nothing in trusts. There's nothing in holdings. We do have some land deeds in our names, but everything else is essentially liquid. And the ladies both held deeds to land that they had purchased in Vancouver, Canada. Our sound barrier just collapsed on us, so we had to take a break.
This is what happens when I give you a blast from the past little joke.
Yeah, I know. Sorry. So both ladies had land that they had purchased in Vancouver, Canada, and they both had total control of both of their estates. And so Linda was ecstatic to hear this, and she offered graciously to hold on to any valuable items they were keeping. In their
Why not?
On their person.
She's so
for safekeeping, I mean,
she's trustworthy.
Super, not sketchy at all. And the sisters actually pushed back a little bit on this, and they were like, no, I mean, I feel like we're living in a pretty safe area. There's not a whole lot of crime here. We don't really go out a whole lot. I think we're fine. And Linda did not back down. And eventually, after a long talk, she convinced the sisters to hand over her valuables. I think the girls were probably just so wiped out at this point. And Linda, who is very manipulative, very charismatic, is a great talker. She's able to talk her way into and out of any situation she gets into. I think they just didn't realize that Linda was taking advantage of them. They, had devoted their lives essentially to this woman and her teachings and were just so psyched that they could not fathom that she could be anything but a miracle worker.
Linda! My savior.
Right. So they say, okay, I mean, if you really want to take my valuable shit, go ahead. So then Linda proceeds to get up and start walking around the apartment, picking up every single item that she could find that was of value. And she picked up some things like Fabergé eggs from Europe, some china, jewelry. She even took rings and jewelry off of Doris's body, off of her neck. She was like, I'll take that necklace, I'll take that ring, and literally just slipped them right off. I mean, this woman is the ballsiest thing I have ever witnessed. She then told the girls, hey, so you guys have deeds to land? Where are those deeds at? Now, back then, again, there's no electronic system where you could just, there's a national data bank of who owns what land. It's you have this piece of paper and this piece of paper is the deed.
Right.
And whoever has that piece of paper has the deed to the
Possession.
land. Exactly.
9/10 of the law.
So, of course, the girls carried these deeds with them as they traveled.
Could you imagine?
My God.
Anything that you own, you got to carry with you.
Yeah, you essentially do. Anything really of value.
There's no registry of deeds.
Because, there's not.
Maybe that's why it was created.
I mean, that's why a lot of our registries were created. And
yes.
we hold
Keep
records
that.
of this stuff now so that, this shit doesn't happen. And someone can't just go into your apartment, take your fucking deed, and then own 78 acres of land in Vancouver. All of a sudden.
All of a sudden.
So, using that same aggressive manipulation, Linda was able to convince the ladies to hand over their land deeds, which she claimed she was going to just bring everything down and lock it in a safe for them with their other valuables and just leave it alone until they got better, because everybody gets better from this.
Yeah, because she's had real success stories.
Yeah. And I mean, it might seem like these ladies are being way too compliant and, reckless with their valuable items and their information, but it's widely believed that both ladies, having been 3 weeks into this program, Their cognition is likely not
I'm
awesome.
sure.
If one doesn't eat or drink regularly, it's quite literally starving to death. And it's likely that their brain is not functioning at the highest capacity.
Mhm.
So take that into account too. They just, did not have that critical thinking and that foresight to really pick up on those cues that Linda was scheming. Now, according to some neighbors, once they hit around the month mark, like around 4 weeks of being in this program, the sisters began to deteriorate pretty rapidly. They noticed that the girls, who were frequently seen taking walks like around the building and at least within the building in the halls a little bit with the assistance of the nurse, they kind of stopped leaving their tiny apartment at all and wouldn't even venture out for their little walks. And in particular, people were reporting that Dora was starting to become very confused off and on. And she would have sort of like episodes of clarity and then episodes of, confusion.
Mm-hmm.
And she would say things at times that really didn't make sense and would see things that weren't there. All of this was, of course, explained away by Linda, who said that it's because the toxins are just leaving your brain and it's making you confused because all of those toxins are just...
How many ways do you think she could have explained her bullshit?
I mean, I think her favorite thing to use was toxins. Toxins. So the more likely scenario was that she was suffering from an encephalopathy due to the malnutrition, the dehydration, because what happens is our brain feeds primarily off of glucose. So sugar in excess isn't great for us, but we all need a little bit of glucose in our bodies to survive and in order for our brains to function. But if you're not consuming any glucose, then your brain can literally not function with low blood sugars like that. And that's why in diabetics, if you get a profoundly low blood sugar, there can be confusion, disorientation, and it's because your brain just can't function under those conditions. So it's likely that her blood sugar was having episodes of being very low. So the nurse that had been following her closest, Nellie, who had been... a good friend to Linda and was trying to really, just do her job well and listen to the provider and do things right and follow this program, was looking at all this and watching the ladies get worse by the day and was becoming very concerned. She's like, something is not right here. These ladies are literally dying in front of me, and Linda just wants them to keep doing this, and that doesn't add up.
Mm-hmm.
So she knew that if she didn't raise the question, at least that, they weren't going to last much longer.
She's got a conscience.
She's got a conscience.
She doesn't care about the toxins.
I know. Fuck toxins. So Linda, and, she would be there when Linda evaluated them, and Linda would be like, great, you guys are doing great. And the nurse is like, you think they're doing great? Like, are we seeing the same thing? Because what the fuck? So on March 29th of 1911, Nellie reaches out to a local physician. Remember, this happened a couple episodes ago. Somebody actually called a real doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And so she reached out to a local physician, an ex-colleague of hers. The two had a good rapport. And she told him about the sisters. They were just talking on the phone. She told them in detail about Linda's plan, what the methods were like, and how she'd watched these ladies get weaker and weaker, thinner and thinner, lose weight, and now, there's confusion happening. So she was just like, listen, am I crazy? Like, tell me I'm not crazy. And he over the phone is like, I mean, my advice would be for them to eat and drink something right now because they are dying. And if they continue to follow this quote unquote program, I am highly suspicious that they will be dead, like within weeks. So she's like, okay, well, at least I'm validated. I don't feel, that crazy anymore. Like someone else agrees with me. Like this is not right. So she goes to both girls and she says, Dora and Claire, I just want you to know, I talked to a physician, a buddy of mine. I told him about you. I told him about the weight loss and how weak you are and how you guys are obviously not doing well. And he really recommends that you eat and drink something. And, he thinks it'll save your life. And he thinks that you guys are, going to continue to do poorly and maybe even die. if you continue doing what you're doing. The girls refused.
Oh, gosh.
It's this, it's fear-based, because what they don't want is, first of all, to everything they're doing to be a total waste.
And be undone.
And be undone. And
be cured.
Because Linda is using this fear-mongering of, toxins and poisons and, mainstream medicine is just poisoning everyone. And it's all fear-mongering. And it's a fear-motivated thing. Like, I have to do this for me. And if I hop off the program now, nothing's ever going to get better. And I'm probably going to get sicker. And it's all just fear.
And all of this was for nothing.
Exactly. So unfortunately, they refused. And Linda is continuing to, promise them over and over again that if you just stick with the program, you're going to get better. So the girls are now passing that 30-day mark. And after having been promised that their ailments would be cured in 30 days, Linda said, you guys just must be doing something wrong.
Oh, come on.
Because it's their fault. It's their fault that, like, you guys must just not be adhering to the program as close. Like, you need to walk more. We need to do more enemas. We need to be more aggressive.
Oh, my gosh.
So Linda urges them to keep going and just amplifies everything.
For how much longer?
Linda, being real sneaky and real protective of her little golden geese, aka the Williamson sisters, gets wind that Nellie communicated with a physician outside of her program, and Nellie's gone.
I was going to say, she must have been livid.
She is not happy. So she's like, I can't trust you anymore, and, that didn't go well. So meanwhile, all of this is unfolding, and finally, construction on the sanitarium has been completed.
Well.
So she says, it's time to get these ladies out of the apartment into the sanitarium where I can isolate them even further. We won't have any more outside influences, no more doctors getting called, and I will have complete control. So,
wow.
The ladies, remember, really can't move on their own a whole lot anymore. It's very limited. So on the morning of April 21st.
How devastating.
Oh, God. On the morning of April 21st, Dora and Claire were physically carried out of their apartment and were en route to Wilderness Heights because, again, they could not walk. So they're loaded into ambulances and brought over to the pier because they have to take a ferry over to Olalla. And they were absolutely thrilled to move on to this next chapter where they felt they needed to go. Then something kind of weird happened. So a strange man approaches the sisters at the pier as they wait their ferry. He introduces himself to the sisters as Linda's attorney. And he states that he had some paperwork for the ladies to sign. And in one document he had Claire sign, it allocated Claire's estate to one of her trusted friends. So she has both girls had this trusted friend who was also a nurse and helped sort of nanny and raise them as they traveled around Europe. And we're going to talk about her a little more in a bit. Her name is Margaret Conway, and she becomes a pivotal person in this whole thing. So he says, if that's the person you trust most, you should allocate your estate to them just in case anything bad happens. Don't you worry, we do this for all of Linda's patients just to cover our bases in case something bad happens. So I think, it's odd that she first had her allocate them to a trusted person, but I think that she was just taking this measure to just make that initial separation of Claire and her estate to someone else. And then, she could later say, if she wanted to, like, oh, well, something bad happened, but we couldn't reach Margaret, so I just kind of took over,
Right.
Again, these laws are not robust enough to protect against, all of that schemery. So she was also directed to write out a letter that would allocate 25 pounds per year to Linda's sanitarium, even after she died.
Like a donation.
Yeah. And that's how intense this relationship was between the sisters and Linda. Like, that's how intensely they believed in her. They're like, even if you kill me,
I'll do this.
But in my mind, it would be my own fault that I die. It wouldn't be Linda's fault. I would have done something wrong. Exactly.
Right.
So, it's just so incredibly sad that it got to the point that it got to. So, April of 1911. Both ladies are now living on the island in Wilderness Heights. Oh, by the way, guess who that strange man was?
Sam.
Uh-huh.
Sam I am.
Dickwad.
Mm.
So, April 1911, both ladies are now living on the island of Olalla, living at Wilderness Heights. And Linda goes to check on Claire and Dora, and somehow convinced Claire to allow her to sort of draft a letter in her name again. So she's more documentation, manipulation here. The letter states that she and her sister were there of their own free will, and that should they die, Linda and Sam would not be held accountable. So essentially, she's drafting this letter that's like a release form. So another thing to try and cover their asses in preparation for these ladies to die. And somehow none of this is like falling into place for them. But again, our cognition is suffering here. And this is like, just the ultimate manipulation. So of course, Claire signs it because of the position she's in. And she continued treatment even after this because Linda convinced her to do so. Dora, again, is having these moments of clarity, but also moments of confusion that are kind of coming and going. Claire then said, what I'd like to do is I'd like to request to send a message to my longtime friend, Margaret Conway, again is her name. And Margaret actually was living in Australia at the time.
Ooh.
But again, she was a very, very good family friend, and she sort of helped raise the girls after their parents died, and they were traveling around Europe. Margaret went with them, and she kind of was like an unofficial mother figure to them. She was an older lady, a retired nurse, and they just had a lot of love for each other. So, we're going to sort of zoom across the world for a sec. Margaret Conway in Australia receives a telegram, which was dated by Claire April 20th, 1911. And this is what it read. Come, SS Miramar, May 8th, first class. So back then, you can't send a ton of words with a cable telegram, apparently. It's a very brief message. And Margaret was immediately nervous because it was very unlike the ladies to message her and beckon her to their side with such urgency. It's thought that Claire did this because she might have started sensing that on some level things were not going well.
That they were not okay.
Especially because she's so weak. And she probably is starting to have these feelings of impending doom, which is a natural thing that happens when you're literally dying. And is thinking to herself, boy, I gave all my, I essentially signed my estate over to her. Like, she needs to know, what's happening with all of this. And I want her with me right now. So she sends this message, and Margaret's immediately concerned. So you best believe Margaret was on that ship, the SS Miramar, on May 8th. And she was on her way from Australia to Seattle. So back in these days, it would take weeks for ships to make it overseas. And that's just how people traveled.
Of course,
so,
this is like just a year or so shy before Titanic.
Yes, exactly.
So.
And from Australia, the ship would cross the Pacific and then first port in Hawaii. That was the first stop. And then it would travel up the coast, the Pacific coast, like up, through California towards Vancouver. So while on board the ship and they ported at Hawaii, Margaret received 2 more cable telegrams at that time when they first ported. So I'm not sure how the cable telegram system really worked back then.
Right.
She can't receive anything on the ship, but apparently she's able to check her messages. Or maybe they, forward it to her at Hawaii, knowing that they'll be here on such a day. I'm not 100% sure. So the timeline here is kind of interesting. So the first message she received was dated May 17th, which simply said, both sisters are doing well, not to worry. Everything's doing fine. The other message she received was actually dated earlier than that first message. It was dated May 2nd. So this was actually sent before she departed and never made it to her before she got on the ship. So she actually should have gotten it prior to leaving for Hawaii. And it was a couple weeks old at that point. So it was kind of a more rambling message. And it was like touting praises for Linda and Sam, and they're helping me so much. I'm doing so well. Claire did sort of flippantly message that Dora's health has been declining a little bit, but I'm doing fabulous. I'm doing great. So Margaret's like, okay, hold on. So you're telling me in one letter that Dora's doing poorly, and in the other letter that's later on, you guys are both doing spectacular. Like, are you guys fine, or is one of you very ill? What is happening? You know what I mean? So she's like just getting more and more panicked at this point because she doesn't know what's going on. So a few more days pass. Margaret reaches the harbor where the ship next ports in Vancouver. So she's going to, disembark the ship in Vancouver and start traveling to Seattle and then Olalla. So she's anticipating being met there by the sisters, and instead, she's met there by Sam, Linda's husband.
Of course she is.
And he gives her the shocking and unfortunate news that Claire has passed away.
Ugh.
And that Dora is very, very ill and likely not far behind her. So, of course, she's absolutely devastated, but immediately the red flags are flying. She's like, the latest correspondence from Claire and said that both sisters were doing fine. Like, what the hell is happening? What is going on? And
I hope she rips him a new one.
You wait. So, and then like weeks prior to that, they were like, we're being so well taken care of. They're taking such great care of us. And so, like, what the hell happened that now one of them is dead and the other one is dying? What's going on? So she demanded that Sam take her to see Dora. So the trip from Vancouver to Seattle would be at least a day-long trip, and the ship ported pretty late at night. So they made a plan to get a hotel room. They're going to sleep, and then in the morning, they're going to depart and leave for Seattle. So back in Seattle, while this is all unfolding, Linda has a little bit of time on her hands, so she reaches out to another family member of the sisters who they had told her about by the name of John Herbert. So he actually lived in Portland, Oregon, which is not too far away from them at all. It was like a fairly, decent drive. I don't live out there, so I'm not 100% sure, but like a day trip out there. And he was really surprised, first of all, to learn that they were even in Seattle, because he didn't have any idea that they were close by. Because remember, they had not told anybody what was going on. They didn't want to get shamed for their, more unconventional beliefs. And he felt like typically, they would let me know if they were in this area. Like, we're pretty close. Like, they would say, hey, we're like in this part of the country. Let's meet up. And Linda told him they wanted to keep their plans to get treated by Linda private, which was actually true. And Linda and John made plans to meet up in the next day or so and just like talk about what happened. This is kind of graphic and kind of bizarre, the approach that she took here with trying to, make sure that no bad light was cast upon her about this. So I think this was obviously a ploy to kind of control the narrative of how Claire died before news broke that she was gone and try to sort of shirk that responsibility again. So John comes
Damage control.
Yeah, damage control. Exactly right. So John shows up at Linda's office and she presents him with this big bag. And she opens it up and empties it in front of him. And the bag contained Claire's organs.
What?
She went through the organs with him, which, he's just received word that his niece is dead. And like, you're showing
and now
me
he's looking at her
fucking bag of her organs. What? Like, you do realize this is very atypical. What is going on? So, of course, the organs were small. They were atrophied from the malnutrition, as, the prior victims she's seen before. And she showed John specifically her liver and claimed, this liver is cirrhotic. She died of liver cirrhosis. And a review of what was known about Claire revealed no evidence whatsoever, first of all, that she suffered from any of like the predicting conditions that could have caused cirrhosis, or that she drank to excess that would have increased her risk. So it's unlikely, based on what's known about her clinically, that she died of cirrhosis. But at the time, you know, John is not a medical person. He's like, I don't know. I mean, this lady's a doctor. I guess, you know, it's if that's what you say, I guess that makes sense. So
can you please stop showing me her organs?
Yes. So he said, can I please just see Claire? I just want to see her. She's awful. Linda then shoves this letter in her face that they had drafted on Claire's behalf, releasing Linda of any responsibility. So she's just like answering all the questions before they even get asked. Like, yes, I'll take you to see her. By the way,
it's not my fault.
It's not my fault. And Claire even says it's not my fault. So suck on that. So when laying eyes on Claire, he was quite shocked. First of all, the person he saw before him looked absolutely nothing like Claire. The person he saw was thin, but not emaciated, not malnourished. Her face was a completely different face. Her hair was different. She was a different person. So John is like kind of looking at her, and he starts getting the feeling like, what the fuck is going on? Like, something is incredibly fishy. He was like, and it occurred to him in that moment, are you trying to pass this other cadaver off as Claire, so that we won't hold you accountable? Because you're throwing a lot of information at me right now that is obviously designed to try and steer me away from the scent. And he's like, this is all seeming very staged and like it's a big show. Like, what the fuck is going on? Like,
and where's my niece?
He's starting to pick up on, like, he's staring at a body that is like pretty obviously not Claire. And I think, you know, obviously if he had shown Claire, he would have, if she had shown him Claire, actual Claire, he would have seen her, you know, shockingly emaciated state.
Cachectic body.
Yes, exactly. So, meanwhile, this is all unfolding. Margaret Conway arrives at Linda's office.
Here we go.
So she struts her, you know, she's a bad bitch, by the way.
Her fancy little ass over.
Yeah, she is strutting her fucking fancy ass in there. And she probably has she probably has like a really cool dress that's like, real cinched
up,
and then like real floofy on the bottom, and then like a hat. Like these ladies that traveled back in the day had like these
first
fucking
class
fancy
madness.
hats. Yes. So she probably was all decked out. So she's up in there, and she is shown immediately when she arrives the same bag of organs and how small they are. And she gets that same cirrhosis explanation that John did, and was shown the same letter and the same dead young woman. And Linda even told Margaret that during her autopsy, Linda noticed that her blood had turned to powder between my fingers. And she blamed the powder thing on toxic medications that doctors had given her as a child. That's what killed her. It was all everybody else but me. Margaret, being somebody with actual medical training, having been a nurse, is like, this is a scam. No. First of all, I don't care what you say. This dead person is not Claire. You can't explain away a different whole ass face. Sorry.
You can't explain a whole ass face.
No, you cannot. So, and also, it's not just her liver that is like shrunken and atrophied, like in a cirrhotic patient. All of her organs are shrunken and atrophied. They are all small. It's not just the liver. So she was like, this is more indicative of starvation. So she knows something's wrong. But initially she's like, I need more information. I'm going to keep these reservations and these concerns to myself for the time being. So she goes along with Linda's explanation, on the outside at least. After viewing Claire's body again at the funeral home, she was like, okay, I now know that this is definitely not Claire. I need to go find Dora because I need to make sure she's actually still alive, and I need to figure out what the fuck is going on. So she accompanies Sam and Linda back to Wilderness Heights, finds Dora, emaciated,
Ugh.
skeletal, weak, confused, and in and out of consciousness. And Margaret tries telling Dora, bro, this lady is fucking killing you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Claire's dead. I suspect she was starved to death, and I expect that this is going to happen to you. Look at you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, look at yourself. She's already killed your sister. Like, let's get you the fuck out of here. Dora refuses to listen to her longtime friend and continues to refuse food and nutrition. She was insistent that Linda's saving me. So Margaret said, okay, if you're not going to leave with me, I'm staying right here. I'm going to stay right here with you. I'm going to watch over you. I am staying on Olalla, and I am staying on this property right here in the sanitarium with you to make sure you get better.
Girl.
Bad bitch. I am telling you, she's a bad bitch. So, Linda was not a huge fan of having somebody watch over Dora.
No kidding.
After all, the entire purpose of this sanitarium was to isolate her victims, right? So, but Linda felt like it would be more suspicious if I shooed her away, and this lady seems loud and like she would raise a fucking ruckus. So, I will allow her to stay, and Linda put her up. It kind of seems like she did this on purpose to be a dick, but Linda put Margaret up in Claire's old room, the room that she had died in.
Oh, come on.
Not cool. So she is the utter worst human being. And it's so maddening. Like, when she's finally facing some consequences for what she did, it's her attitude. Everything is so maddening. Just wait.
I can't.
So this goes on with both Margaret and Dora still at Wilderness Heights for weeks more.
I can't believe she lasts that long.
I literally can't either. It's like wild.
I can't believe she lasts that long.
She's a fighter, I'll tell you. With Linda performing these treatments on Dora, and that Nurse Margaret is watching every fucking thing she does. And she's like, this is nonsense. But again, she's starting to get the impression that this lady might be dangerous. Like, things are kind of coming together. Like, so she's still kind of playing the part of the concerned friend who's just hanging out to watch over her buddy and trying to seem kind of aloof and not so in tune with the idea.
Against Linda.
Not suspicious. Exactly. So one day, because Margaret was growing so, concerned after watching Dora slowly starve to death, and she's like, okay, like, if I'm going to put an end to this, I really need to find evidence, because there's no way Dora is going to listen to me unless I, at least present her with something that shows her, look, this is what they're doing and this is why they're doing it. So so bad bitch Nurse Margaret sneaks into Sam's office when they're not around one day.
Oh.
And this is where she finds that smoking gun. She found a shitload of documents signed by Claire, all those documents that they had Claire sign, and the ones that gave the little letter that she showed her, but also ones that gave Sam full control of both of the girls' finances. So at some point, even though Claire had signed all of her stuff over to Margaret, at some point in there, they had interfered and gotten her to sign over her power of attorney to Sam and Linda.
Wow.
So she found these documents, and she found some signed by Dora as well, allocating all of her resources to Sam and Linda. And she found one issuing Sam full power of attorney. And issuing him full power of attorney essentially gave Sam full control over her entire estate. And Margaret takes these documents and she takes them over to Dora. And she's like, look, why the hell else would these people do this if they are not taking advantage of you? Do you understand that not if you die, when you die, they get all of your money? That is the only reason you're here. They are not trying to help you. They are hurting you. And she also, Dora's looking at all this and she's like, oh shit. Finally has a little bit of a revelation.
Okay.
That oh my God, they might really be trying to slowly kill me. And it's kind of starting to make sense. It's starting to click. So she also says, Margaret, earlier this month, I asked Sam if I could send some money to, earlier this month, I had told Sam that I wanted to send some money to a relative because I had a relative who, had written me and said that he was in need of some money, but I was too weak to go to the post office and do it myself. So Sam said, well, I have a good idea. If you sign all of your assets over to me and give me control of your bank account, I can take care of all this shit for you. I can pay all those old bills. I can pay all of your relatives anything they want. And I
do it all for you while you're getting better.
I'll do it all for you while you get better. So she signed it. And of course, in the moment, who knows what her cognition was like.
Sam. She's probably like, that's so sweet of you.
That's so sweet. So now all of this is coming together like, oh shit, I'm on death's doorway and they have literal legal control over all of my assets. This is not good, at least after I die.
Fight, girl, fight.
So Margaret goes to the post office and the bank and she starts doing some digging that same day after this conversation with Dora to figure out, okay, I need to find the paper trail of what happened with that transaction, with that money that Sam was supposed to get to the relative. She found that transaction did occur from Dora's account around the same time she requested, but the money that was supposed to go from Dora's bank account to a relative was transferred out of her account and into Sam's account.
Imagine that!
Spoiler alert. So, it seems that after this talk with Margaret, finally Dora is like piecing things together and again is like, holy shit, I just lost my sister and I'm not far behind if I keep doing this. So around this time, Margaret spotted Linda traipsing around the compound wearing Claire's old clothes and jewelry. Yeah. And that sort of was pushing things over the edge even more. So, and at one point, Margaret had written some letters to some family members just to let them know what was going on with the sisters. And she said, okay, I have some letters I need to send out from Malala. And Sam and Linda said, oh, you know what? There's this new citywide ordinance where all of the mailboxes have to be locked. It's like this weird thing. If you have any mail that needs to go out, you could give it to me. And when we go to the mainland, we will take care of it for you. So Margaret was like, yeah, right. If I do that, my mail isn't going to go anywhere. So they're starting to now try and control me and what my correspondence and what I'm doing. Again, she is being very smart about this and still trying not to let Sam and Linda know her suspicions. She is being super sneaky, especially now because she's starting to realize how dangerous these people are and like who the fuck knows what they're capable of. So a day or so later, she happens to run into the postmaster who was coming to collect mail on Alala, and she asked about that new ordinance where all the mailboxes had to be locked, and he looked at her like she had 3 heads. The fuck you talking about? There's no ordinance. Our mailboxes don't need to be locked. You can mail whatever the fuck you want. So she goes back and she's like, that's it. She confronts Linda about everything. She's like, first of all, I just caught you in a lie because that mailbox thing was utter bullshit. I can mail whatever I want. And this huge argument about everything about Dora, everything about Claire, all of that ensued. Now, you might be wondering why Margaret and Dora didn't just leave. I did too. We know some reports, but there's no, exact clear account of what happened. It's likely that, first of all, Dora being so ill, moving her is easier said than done. Like at this point, she's probably close to death. I mean, she would need an ambulance crew. And Margaret knew, again, that Sam and Linda are probably dangerous and trying to arrange for her to leave might be what pushes them to kill Dora even faster. Because, they want to keep what they were trying to obtain all along, which is all of her assets. And right now, legally, it's theirs. They can have it. They just need to, get rid of Dora and they would have everything she has. So in the moment, she probably just decided to let's both stay here so that I'm not leaving your side. I need to monitor the situation and I'm going to try and keep you safe until I come up with a plan of how I'm going to safely extricate both of us from this island. So, with correspondence off island being intercepted by Linda and Sam and no mode of transportation on her own, not only is Dora trapped, Margaret is essentially trapped.
Right.
She's like, she has no way of communicating, of setting anything up on her own.
Mm-hmm.
So, amazingly, July rolls around. Dora is still with us.
I camped since February.
Yes. This is absolutely wild. So, 4th of July, there's this big fireworks display out on the mainland. So they wheel all of the patients out to sort of the coast of the island so everybody can watch the 4th of July celebration. So all the patients get wheeled out to the shore to go and watch. Should be a fun time. Now, remember, Dora is not the only patient here. There are others who are under Linda's care at Wilderness Heights. So Margaret is outside with Dora, waiting on the fireworks, and another patient approaches Margaret, and she said, "I know that you're not a patient here. Please help me." She had quite a chilling conversation with this woman who was cachectic, malnourished, frail, and who said, "I'm a prisoner here. We're all prisoners here.
Oh my gosh.
We can't talk with our families. We can't call anyone. We can't write anyone. We can't leave if we want to. None of us can do anything, and they're cutting us off." She begged Margaret essentially to find a way to help her leave Olalla. And she told her, "Listen, I can't leave the island without Dora. I would help you, but I cannot leave without her, and she is way too sick to leave right now. But I will figure out a way to get all of us off this island. I'm going to figure it out. Stay tuned." So, days later, a nurse who worked for Linda approached Margaret, and this nurse was having a huge amount of issues with Linda's methods, and obviously we're systematically murdering people here.
Mm-hmm.
So she told Margaret about one particular case of Earl Edward Erdman. Now, this is the guy in part 2 we talked about who kept that detailed food journal.
Yeah.
And the nurse showed Margaret a bunch of newspaper clippings about the case, and the two had a long talk about it. And eventually, Margaret's kind of flipping through holy shit. And then she lands on this article about the case that Linda had conducted the autopsy, and she noted during the autopsy that the organs were of infantile size.
Mm-hmm.
And she knew Linda had starved him to death too and taken his estate too, because that's exactly what Linda had told her and shown her about Claire's organs, that they were all small. So she's like, "That's enough. I've had enough. I have to get Dora off this island before the same thing happens to her. She's going to die." So July 18th, 1911, Margaret very quickly packs up her things, Dora's things, and they were ready to demand to be given passage to the mainland. Linda, of course, intervenes immediately. So reportedly, this huge argument ensues. Linda flies off the handle, likely at the prospect of losing everything she had been working towards. And she tried to say, it's not safe for Dora to travel. And if she comes off this program, that's what's going to kill her.
Right.
So when Margaret pushes back and basically says, I don't care, we're leaving, Linda says to them, "Well, guess what? Sam and I are her legal guardians.
Come on.
And legally, she can only go if I say she can go." Margaret and Dora were shocked. They both know about the power of attorney thing, but neither of them knew how the guardianship thing happened.
Yeah.
So,
holy crap.
This is a little different than the durable power of attorney. So we knew that she had signed that over to Sam weeks prior so that he could manage her finances and whatnot. And that basically appoints him control of her assets and medical decisions if she were unable to make her own decisions or when she passes away. But the guardianship is a little different. Essentially, that appoints Linda and Sam as her legal guardians, as if she were a minor right now. Essentially rendering her incapable of making any of her own decisions. So this kind of sent Margaret. Isn't this insane? So this sends Margaret into a bit of a panic, because how in the fuck did this happen? How was she able to make this happen? And So in that moment, she was able to find a way to send a cable letter over to John Herbert, that uncle of theirs.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how she was able to get it past Linda and Sam, but she did. She's a sneaky bitch. She figured it out. And Uncle John comes over, and this moment, the fact that she was able to get that message to John ends up being like a little bit of a pivotal moment in this whole thing. So he picks up and travels right to Linda's Seattle office and confronts her there about the guardianship. And Linda, he was like, how did you get guardianship? Who the hell are you to these people that you're going to make their decisions for them? This doesn't make any sense. Linda basically said, you can talk to my lawyer. It's none of your business. And at that point, she kind of shuts down to Uncle John, unfortunately. And John, in response to that, was like, oh, the fuck you did not.
You did not just piss me off.
He says, guess what? I'm going to go see Dora right now. So he ferries over to Olalla. And he and Linda follows him over. The two meet again at Wilderness Heights. They have another confrontation. During this conversation, Linda had the actual gall to state to John, well, she's not leaving here until she settles her debts. Because she owes me a lot of back payments for all the treatment she's gotten over these past several months. And she is not leaving here until her debts are paid up. And she essentially starts demanding money from John on Dora's behalf.
Right.
And she said, Dora owes me about $700.
Bullshit.
Which today equates to about $20,000. So after a long argument, John realizes that there is no way physically or legally to remove his niece from this island unless this woman gets her money.
What she wants.
And so, of course, he's extremely concerned for Dora's welfare. He's like, there's a little bit of urgency here. I need to get her to an actual hospital. And finally, he's like, will you take a traveler's check? I just need her to get off this island so I can figure out what the fuck is going on. So finally, on July 22nd of 1911, 3 days after this encounter, Dora, Margaret, and John all board a ship,
oh my gosh,
leaving Olalla and head for Tacoma, Washington.
Holy crap.
So,
what about the rest of them?
Stay tuned.
All the other prisoners.
Stay tuned. So Dora, having just left this awful, traumatic situation,
leaving her sister's dead body behind too.
Is of course devastated at how everything turned out. She was so sad for her sister who she had lost and just died in this horrible way. And she's like, we need to get justice for Claire and also get these other fucking people off this island. Mm-hmm. So Dora ends up staying for at least for a period of time in Tacoma so that she could be sort of close by, but not right in Seattle. And
I'm assuming she's at a hospital. So
she had gone to get treatment in a hospital. And at this time, it's time for her to get her life back a little bit. So she had some after effects from everything she had been through. For starters, when she left Olalla, she weighed 60 pounds.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
She struggled with PTSD and endorsed having frequent nightmares about being back in her room, back in the bathtub, just feeling like she was back in her room and that she couldn't escape.
Mm.
She had been on this incredible calorie restricted diet and essentially in a fasting state for 93 days. I cannot believe she survived. I literally cannot believe it. It is a miracle that she survived. So after that amount of time on very little food, it's not like she could just suddenly start eating large amounts again. I know, you can't really do that. So her body and stomach had likely adapted to getting very little food, and after such a long time, processing solid foods would prove to be very difficult. After all, we know that when in a malnourished state, our organs shrink a little bit. So that goes for our stomach and our intestines as well. And that, in turn, decreases their filling capacity. So, additionally, the metabolism changes drastically as her body has adjusted to, deriving nutrients from muscle and organ tissue to absorbing nutrition back through the gut again. This is a whole big change. And eating solids was probably really uncomfortable at first. And she probably had indigestion, bloating, gas, nausea, diarrhea, all of the above.
Mm-hmm.
And according to the Journal of American Medicine, reintroducing foods to a severely malnourished person and getting their metabolism and intestinal tract back to their normal by following a very monitored and specific diet can take around 2 months. So, I mean, it takes quite a while to revert back to like normal. So, Dora's first step once she was stable was reaching out to the British consulate because she's a citizen of the UK. So for her, any legal issues, it needs to go through the British consulate. So it was so clear to her that Linda was using all of these legal loopholes to get away with this for so long. And like, who the hell knows how many other people she's done this to? So the vice consulate actually comes out and meets Dora and John at a hotel in Tacoma to talk about what happened. And he is absolutely shocked to hear what they have shared with him about Linda and what she had been doing. He was absolutely floored she had gotten away with this for so long and is continuing to victimize people and is doing it right now and has people in her sanitarium right now that she's doing this to. So his first step is contacting an American lawyer for consultation who specialized in fraud cases. So this lawyer and the British consulate are now working together to start building a case. Okay, what can we prosecute this lady for? And it's not like Kitsap County and the state of Washington didn't know about Linda. They knew about her and were very well aware of the patients that had died under her care. And it turned out they had been tracking and watching her for quite some time and had a ton of case files on Linda that they were keeping notes on. As with each suspicious death, they wanted to investigate it, but of course, each time they found no actual illegality on her part. So finding proof of her wrongdoings was really hard to come by until now because they have survivors who got out, who are witnesses, and the testimonies of what Dora and Margaret saw while they were there ended up being critical for their case. So that was enough for a warrant. They were able to get a warrant. So on August 5th, 1911, Kitsap County Police arrested Linda on several charges, including first-degree murder. Her behavior when she was arrested was like kind of bizarre. So according to Starvation Heights, she was like giddy and seemed eager to talk initially when she was like being picked up, and then in the car ride in the police car she was talking nonstop. Like she would not stop, and she was making all these outlandish claims that I've only lost 12 patients out of 1,000 and I help people and I have done nothing wrong and I'm just doing the best I can for everybody. LOL. No, nobody wants to hear it. You're crazy. So nobody knows where those 1,000 people are that apparently did great. I think all of them probably died. So the trial was scheduled and began in January of 1912. Actually, the first day was January 15th, 1912, for the murder of Claire Williamson. So this, like, blew up in the media. It was an absolute circus. Headlines like Starvation Doctor Murder Trial Begins and, like, you know, all of that, you know, similar stuff. And it was during this period that the media eventually dubbed her sanitarium with the nickname Starvation Heights. So that's where this came from, the media. You know, they're so good at coming up with all this fucking crazy shit. Linda took every opportunity to claim her innocence during the trial. She was boisterous and she talked to every reporter that would listen to her. Of course, refuting any involvement in Claire's murder and claiming that she only ever wanted to help people, that her program did work. It worked all the time. And prosecution honestly didn't have any issue proving their case, though. They presented a bunch of evidence that Linda had ulterior motives. They had all of that paperwork. They even found that during the quote-unquote autopsy, Linda had popped out Claire's crowns and sold them for money.
Come on. No.
Yeah. This is how unbelievably callous and just sociopathic this woman is. They presented evidence also that included the fact that Claire's valuables were later found in Linda's possession, like her clothes, her jewelry, and of course her land deeds.
I was going to say the deeds.
The deeds. The biggest moment in the trial by far was Dora's testimony.
Oh gosh, I can't even.
So on January 19th, Dora took the stand and she spent 4 grueling days retelling the absolute utter horrors of her and her sister's treatments. The testimony went into the entirety of the program, all of the details of everything they were subjected to, the beatings, the enemas, of course, the diet or lack thereof, and the fact that they were essentially cut off from the outside world, and that, you know, these people were pushing patients to sign over their rights, all of the forms they were instructed to sign in moments of, you know, not being cognitively intact. And she talked about the suffering she endured while she literally starved. On February 4th, 1912, the jury found Linda Burfield Hazzard guilty.
Thank freaking God.
But not of first-degree murder, as prosecutors had hoped.
Okay.
Shockingly, she was found guilty of manslaughter, which essentially means that she was found guilty of killing Claire, but not necessarily that it was intentional. It was not ideal, but at least she was going to jail for the time being. And she was sentenced to 2 to 5 years of hard labor at the Washington State Penitentiary. So the next 2 years, I'm not exactly sure what happened here, but she didn't go to jail immediately, which I guess was not unusual for this time period. So she was allowed to spend 2 more years outside before actually serving her time.
Oh, dear.
And so her medical license, of course, has been revoked. Her, phony-ass medical license that had no basis to begin with. But even so, in 1913, she was subpoenaed to testify regarding the suspicious deaths of 2 more patients whom apparently had died in her care. Months later, she was committed to prison, sort of while these cases were being investigated, so ultimately the inquest against her was not pursued because she was already going to jail.
I would have for more time.
Well, sure.
Keep racking up the years.
But, I mean, at this point, she doesn't even have a license, but people are still coming to her. People still believe in her and want to be a part of her program. And
no, thank you.
It's just insane. So she must have been just confident enough, magnetic enough to just rein people in. And, her writings just had such a hold on people. So at the end of 1913, she finally gets checked into prison, right? And one thing I found interesting was that during her intake, Linda was given some paperwork to fill out, an inventory of her belongings and just some intake paperwork. And the word convict was on the paper, and she crossed it out. And she wrote, "I did not commit any crimes." So she just
sassafras
has no remorse, no sense of responsibility.
Not even for killing them, but
anything.
Then all the
not an ounce.
Other intentions that she was planning to do with their estate and everything else afterwards. Please.
Nothing at all. It's just insane. So Linda's in prison. We're safe now, right?
So we think.
No.
What about Sam?
So we'll get back to Sam. One man, at least, is known to have died while following Linda's program at home on his own, based on her writings. So she was asked and apparently refused to pull the book from the market because she wanted more people to read it. She wanted more people to follow it. She was so confident in her methods and in her book.
It's killing people.
So much so that while in prison, she wrote 2 more books. People were writing her letters of support, and she was writing letters back to people. She was answering letters, and she was also reaching out to new, very wealthy people. December 1915, after serving 2 years, which was the minimum sentence she was supposed to serve, she was released from prison. At this point, she is 48 years old. Months after her release, the governor of the state of Washington offered her a pardon, which would expunge her criminal record as long as she agrees to leave the country.
Come on.
He's like, listen, lady, I understand you're back out. I really don't want to have to see your face ever again or deal with any of your bullshit.
So let's take your problems to another country.
So leave the country and I will expunge your criminal record. To which she replied,
bingo.
Okay. So,
come on.
By the way, Sam, of course, waited for her and stayed with her this whole time because
bigamous Sam.
She did the same for him when he was in jail for bigamy. I mean, come on. So, a couple months after her release, she is pleased to GTFO. So she and Sam decide to head for Auckland, New Zealand. Hey, New Zealand babies, we love you. So New Zealand at the time, again, a very progressive country. They're very liberal. So she and Sam resettle there in Auckland and promptly open a medical practice because why the hell not? They immediately start advertising her as a physician and as an osteopath. Once again, people start flocking in. They've read her books, and she quickly finds success. In 1917, she even published a fourth book called Diet and Disease, Systemic Cleansing. She practiced and treated people in New Zealand for an additional 5 years.
Stop.
So, no recorded deaths happen that we know of, but it's unclear if that's just because she didn't kill anyone or if she got really good at hiding when she killed someone. We don't know for sure. And also, like, records from New Zealand at the time, weren't available to the U.S. readily. So, in 1920, it's been 5 years. In 1920, she and Sam get bored.
So now what?
They decide to go back to the U.S. They miss it.
Come on!
They miss Seattle. They miss the Pacific Northwest.
We're not supposed to go there, but we're going to go.
Yeah. So she, despite the terms of her pardon, decides, it's probably been enough time. They've probably forgotten about me by now. I can probably go there and restart my practice there. It will be fine. Everything will be fine. It will work out. Shockingly, they immediately purchase land on Olalla, just north of the original sanitarium, and they begin construction on a new facility to expand the place.
Stop.
It was massive. 3 stories, huge. So now at this time, she did not have a license. It was still revoked. She didn't care. She evidently thought, again, 5 years is enough time for me to have been forgotten and I can just start anew. And she starts right in recruiting clients, wealthy ones, of course. So by this time, she was actually kind of right. A lot of people had kind of forgotten her. Like all of the hullabaloo about the trial and everything had kind of died down. She called this new revamped facility the Institute of Health because you can't, keep calling it Starvation Heights. That doesn't bode well for her intake of clientele.
Nope.
So she also reestablishes her Seattle practice and was seeing outpatients there too. She was making house calls and people were following her plan at home. So she rebuilds from the ground up. She was getting well-paying clients and taking them for everything that they had. And she finally found a way, whatever it was, to kind of operate under the radar for a period of time, an alarming period of time. I know what you're thinking. Eventually, this does end. But right now, it seems like
I don't know. I don't know.
Devon's like, I'm checked out. I'm so over this right now. Just fucking put me out
because I'm
of my
like,
misery.
when does she die? Where's the death?
We're getting there. I'm so sorry. This is so long, but there's just so much information.
It's amazingly, but I want to know when she gets what she's due.
Don't you worry. It is satisfying.
That's what I want to know.
It is satisfying. So she's operating under the radar for whatever reason. She's hiding things very well. In 1925. So she's doing this for an additional 5 years.
What?
Yeah. Harming and probably killing countless others in the process. In 1925, she was arrested, finally, because she had traveled to California to care for a patient in their home. So California at the time had laws that were a little bit beefier. And Evidently, she was caught stating that she had a medical license, as she always did, when she actually did not. And in California, thank the Lord, that was against the law.
Thank God.
Thank the Lord.
Thank God.
So she was arrested and released pending an investigation in California, and then returned to Washington and continued treating people. Again, I know this never ends.
Never.
Now, the same year, a short time later in 1925, a patient by the name Leonard Ritter sells his entire estate to fund his treatment with Linda. He dies after being in her treatment center for 84 days.
Stop.
84 days. So Leonard happened to be a well-respected member of this community, and the media catches wind of this one because he is missed a lot. So he's not one that could just drop off the face of the earth without notice like others could.
Mm-hmm.
Authorities finally kind of recognized, hey, this lady's back and she's doing that thing again. And
the thing. She's doing that thing again, guys.
She's doing this whole thing again, you guys. I feel like she's not supposed to be doing that thing. And she was met with some charges.
We talked about this.
I thought we got you the fuck out of the country. But apparently she was never hit with a murder charge, and they were more like her charges she was hit with were sort of more clerical, actually, because of course they couldn't prove that she physically did anything to murder him. Well, so the charges themselves, I don't even know what they were, honestly, because they're not well documented, but she was given $100 fine and no jail time. Yeah, that's it.
Wow.
Nowadays, no medical professional would get away with any of this, thankfully, and she almost never faced consequences for her actions. Mm-hmm. Although, nowadays, some medical professionals are getting away with a lot. Go listen to some prior episodes. I'm sure we got a few for you.
They're there.
They're there. There's the oddball here and there. Finally, her reputation again begins to suffer a bit, but she's pressing on. In May 1930, another 5 years later,
I can't even.
I can't
even.
Shook that this occurred in the timeline that it did. In 1930, Starvation Heights, the original compound that she built, and the new compound that she had built,
burned to the ground.
Yes, you called
Shut
it.
up!
Devon!
My dreams come true.
But it was an on-purpose type of situation. Not. It mysteriously caught fire. She was seen staring at it from nearby, and Sam was even seen shooing people away from trying to help put out the fire when it was smaller. And of course, the entire place was well insured, and the pair had a beautiful payout from the damages. So even after this, Linda is still fucking seeing patients.
Linda needs to die.
She thinks of herself as like this martyr for the cause, and it is bonkers. Finally, in 1938, at age 70, she is still convinced that her methods were the end-all be-all, and convinced of their efficacy. She herself was starting to get older and wanting to preserve her own health as much as possible. So she starts herself on her own program.
No, she doesn't.
Yeah, she does.
For herself. Is she dumb? I'm sorry. Is she dumb?
So
she's got to be dumb.
She is maybe not as psychotic as she is delusional, and she just has this such staunch belief in her program that she's
But no
deluded.
one survived so far.
I know.
So why?
There are actual photos of... So, at the end of June in 1938, Linda Hazzard was found deceased in her home. The coroner revealed the cause of death as severe malnutrition and starvation. Mm-hmm. There are photos of her towards the end sitting up in a wheelchair, and she just looks like an absolute skeleton. It is wild.
Good.
We'll post them.
I'm amazed. Why would she do that to herself, though? I'm very confused.
So she believed
she's just that much of a narcissist.
She is a delusional narcissistic
that I'll
person.
Just prove you all wrong.
Yep. And I've gotten so much flack for this, and I'm going to demonstrate once again that this is the end all be all.
Wow.
After her death, Her husband Sam relocated from the States back to New Zealand. And he died in 1946 of
malnutrition,
severe malnutrition and starvation, thought to have been following Linda's program himself.
That's what you get, people.
In terms of the compounds on Olalla, so they are obviously no longer standing after the fire, but both of the foundations and the incinerators remain intact, which is kind of eerie.
Huh.
Mm-hmm. But I do know that that's finally the end of this fucking story.
Fucking Linda. Fucking Linda.
Fucking Linda. Sorry, I just like roundhouse kicked the microphone because I was excited to be done. It was like bam. Anyway, that was exhausting, and I
a little bit wish that she was like forcefully malnourished.
I know.
The fact that she I
hope that she suffered, and I hope it was painful, and I hope she was confused and scared and alone when she died. That's what I hope.
Yeah.
That's what I hope. We can only hope for all of that.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And it's so heartbreaking for these people and their families. And, we just don't know exactly what the extent was.
Absolutely not.
It's just so sad.
I feel so bad for Claire.
Oh, my gosh.
And Dora. Thank you for listening, everybody. If you stuck to it, let us know.
Oh, my God.
If you were also like me and like, guys, just tell me when she's dead. Like,
yep.
Hey, tell us.
Like, can we just fast forward to the end when we've...
Tell me when she's dead.
I'm sorry to have taken up so many hours of your life with this insanity, but it was an important story to tell.
It's amazing. I just can't believe she got away with it for that freaking long.
It's so frustrating.
It's insane.
There is a certain beautiful irony, though, that she starved herself to death on purpose.
Yes.
I kind of love that.
That is there.
Yes.
Thank you for listening. If you want to keep listening and hearing from us, you can search for us on Instagram at Medcrimes Podcast.
You can twit, I don't know, at Medcrimes PC.
Send an email to Elon.
You could do that. Does he answer emails?
I don't know.
I don't know.
You can search for us on Facebook at Medcrimes Podcast.
If you wish to become a Patreon, you can sign up at www.patreon.com/medcrimespodcast.
You can send us emails of crazy stories, anything you want to hear, or just compliment us.
We are getting some good ones, so thank you.
At www.medcrimes@gmail.com.
You guys are the tits.
The bits tits.
Stay safe out there.